Okay, so we're gradating our darker area and we're feathering this across, gradating it across like this. Um, so you're taking your dark, drag it across so you get a gradation to the value, right? There we go. And what I'm going to do is when I look at the container here to there, if you look at that over in reality, light hits it here and this plane on top becomes a little darker. So we can separate that edge a little bit. Now I'm using my compressed charcoal and I'm going to put that little edge in, but I can't go too dark. So I don't want it black, as jet black as that. So this edge separates from that edge. So we work edges. So you try to watch which one is darker, which one's lighter, and then you got to get your finger in there and get them real sharp, because if those values aren't right up against the edge of the thing, it won't give the good illusion that you're looking for. So this is going to look a little choppy because of the angle I'm working. I'm trying to kind of consider, so I'm not going to get this ellipse the way I would like it. I can already know it's lopsided, but I'm going to leave it. So that's going to do that. Now in the center, we're going to start to deal with some light. So I'm going to take an eraser and I'm going to lift first a little light out of there. And I have to be careful. So before I do that, I want to figure out my lightest area on this cup. So those can see it. You can see a little ridge of light right here on this cup like this. A little spot of light. So now, as soon as I go lighter, your off-white falls into an off-white range. You hardly know it before that. Then there's a little thickness to the ridge of the cup when I see, so the highlight is just below it. So I see another highlight right here. So I'm going to put that in there. So the light's falling across like that. So we got those little lights on there, and now I want to watch the edge of the cup. Now nothing on this edge of the cup equals that light. So I have to be real careful with how I place my lights. I can go a little bit lighter down here, but not as white as I just did up there, or it'll hurt the contrast of what I was doing up there. So I can get a little separation down here, because when I look at reality, the light mug at the bottom is a little whiter than the material that it sits on. So I'm going to do that with it. And I'm going to go just a little lighter in order to put another value in here, but not that light. So there's a hierarchy to our lights. So I have to be careful with them, and I'm only putting these in right now so that I can view this to that. So my highlights that I put on the black object can't equal that highlight that I put on there, or it begins to lose the effect of my extremes on white. So on the little ridge of this object, it gets a little lighter right here. And I made that a little broad, not purposely, but by accident. But I'm going to tone it down on the bottom so you can see that light. So you got to watch where they're placed, and you got to take your kneaded eraser and you got to get it sharp. And I would have to be like this right in front of it to execute it well, but you can all see it. Now I'm just using my eraser. Now this, because it's surrounded by darks, might look that light, but it's not. I added white here. This is erased. At the very most, it is a middle tone. So but that's how the illusions work. And then on the edge of this container here, it gets a little bit lighter there. And so you work with that. And then as it goes up, it gets a little bit lighter right in line with my lights, kind of a grouped little area, like right in through there, okay? I can use a little bit of light, but not much, right through here. So all I'm going to do is put a little bit, not as light as my lights there, so I get a little bit of a change. Now these things are subtle. Again, they're supposed to be subtle at this stage. The drama extremes are over, but in a drawing, you've got to have subtlety. If you just have big dramatic areas of dark to middle or dark to light, then these contrasts lose their appeal. So the other place where I'm getting some wonderful light is on the tablecloth between the pear and the black object. And so I see this wonderful light streaming through. And I like it there because it helps pull the contrast. Now I don't see it right up against the shadow. I see a space in there that's an off-white. So it's going from that to an off-white to a shadow. Now, what I'm going to do is add just a few more strokes. On the pear, all of you can see the highlight. And for me, there's a highlight crossing there. And so you want to get the angle of it. And I want to say the pear is very broad at this point, so I'm flattening out my eraser. And I want to try to get it with a few strokes and say it crosses this way. But there's a middle tone in between. I got to be careful not to lose that. And it comes up, and then it gets narrower and comes this way. So now I lifted a light, and it's nowhere near this light. I even got it darker than this light because it's on a middle tone object. Now, by putting that white in there helps set the stage of saying that's not pure white. So we see by relationships. So that white's important to show that's not white. On the stem, it picks up an edge along a light edge along here. And that gets even lighter, but I'm going to lift it first with the eraser if I can get it. And the other side retains its mid-tone value. Okay, just a slightly darker mid-tone than the background. And then into it, I'm going to take a little of my white, but not press firmly with it, and go a little bit lighter. Then I've got it. And for me, it trails the edge. I kind of like so it does that. So now that stands out well. This still melts. Now, little things can separate it from the background, but I wouldn't want to separate it from the background too much. Now with these, this is all I'm going to have you do to these. There's much more rendering in something like this. Like say, for example, there's going to be reflective light you're going to see in here. Edit it. Don't do anything with it. That's going to be what we're going to talk about next week. I'm going to talk about reflective lights and coarse shadows. So I'm just after these three values. We're adding a little bit of light in the gradations. In the dark, we put our dark and gradated it a little bit. And that's all we're doing with them. I'm not trying to carry it to an extreme conclusion. So on the tablecloth, it's the lights coming from my left to my right. So what I'm going to do to finish this off is to take this light and make it just a little bit lighter. And so it's coming sharp up against the pear right here. And I'm going to gradate it back. You don't want the same white all along here because, again, different plane, different value. This white pulls out. If I put it back here, it flattens out my pear. I almost brought it up a touch too far already, but I'm going to be careful to blur that out a little bit. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go a little lighter in the front. Sparingly, not all over there, and it starts to fade. So I'm going to put a little more emphasis there to create a little depth because the gradation is going to push this back a little bit. And I'm going to begin to fade it. So with these accents, less is more. I don't want to bring that light up to the cup because what happens is it would hurt my light there and the light begins to fade as it travels. So it's a gradation. Gradation means it gradually fades out, gradually fades out, gradually fades out. So with that little bit, it now push this back a little bit. There's little details in places. I'm going to leave it. And so is what I need you guys to do is spend most of your time on the first part of this process and then craft your edges well, keep your things, get rid of all the detail like this was at the beginning. And then when you do develop it, like on this mug, there's 2 highlights and a little bit of light. That's it. Everything else was left. Stay away from reflected lights and modeling at that stage. I didn't model anything in there. Leave them alone. We are going to talk about that on our next class. as we try to build slowly and put all the information together.